In the quiet, trusting suburbs of Chicago, Norwood Park Township, between 1972 and 1978, life moved at an easy, deceptively peaceful pace. Doors were left unlocked at night. Neighbors waved warmly from across the street. Everyone knew your name, or at least they thought they did. This was the American dream in the 1970s. Backyard barbecues on warm summer evenings. Little league games under the lights. Block parties filled with laughter and easy conversation. And right in the middle of it all stood one man who seemed to embody everything good, everything normal about the neighborhood. Later they would call him the Killer Clown. But that name came much later. For years he was simply John Wayne Gacy, a successful contractor, a respected community leader, and a beloved children's entertainer who brought smiles wherever he went. Gacy owned and operated PDM contractors, painting, decorating, and maintenance. He hired young men right off the street, paid them cash, and threw lively neighborhood parties. Everyone who met him liked him. Everyone trusted him completely. It all began in 1972. That was the year the first bodies started appearing beneath the floorboards of what looked like an ordinary suburban home in a peaceful Chicago neighborhood. He created two clown personas, Pogo the Clown and Patches. He performed at children's birthday parties, local hospitals, and parades. The kids adored him. Their parents handed their children over without a second thought. On the surface, he was the perfect citizen, a successful businessman, a Democratic precinct captain who once shook hands with First Lady Rosalind Carter. To everyone who knew him, he was the ideal neighbor. He had been married twice and was a stepfather to two children. He was a pillar of the community, active in local politics and charity work. No one suspected the nightmare hidden directly beneath his house. Through his contracting business, he constantly hired young men straight off the street. He offered them jobs, rides home, and sometimes something far darker. They trusted the friendly, smiling boss without hesitation. He was deeply involved in local politics, raised money for the Democratic Party, and rubbed shoulders with powerful people. He hid his true self in plain sight behind a flawless mask of respectability. Behind the greasepaint smile and the bright red nose was something cold and empty, something that no child, no parent, and no human being should ever have to see. The address 8213 West Summerdale Avenue looked exactly like every other modest brick ranch house on the block. But if you look closer, if you listen carefully, something was terribly, horribly wrong inside. He already had a criminal record in Iowa for sexually assaulting a teenage boy and had served time in prison. But in Chicago, he kept his record clean. The neighbors never knew about his dark past. The horror would remain close to home for years. But eventually, the Des Plaines River would become the final resting place for some of his victims, carrying the evidence silently downstream. America in the 1970s still believed that monsters lived only in dark city alleys. No one imagined they could be living right next door in the quiet, tree-lined suburbs. He even joined a local clown club called the Jolly Jokers and performed for sick children in hospitals. It was the ultimate disguise, using laughter to hide pure evil. The local press loved him. The community trusted him completely. No one was looking beneath the surface of this smiling, helpful, all-American neighbor. And yet, inside that ordinary suburban house, something unimaginable had already begun, something that would eventually shock the entire nation. On January 3rd, 1972, 16-year-old Timothy McCoy missed his bus. John Wayne Gacy pulled up in his truck and offered the boy a ride home. That was the last time anyone ever saw Timothy alive. Gacy had a special magic trick he liked to show his victims. Once the handcuffs snapped shut around their wrists, there was no escape. The trap had already been sprung. He used what he called the rope trick, a ligature tied around the victim's neck and connected to his own wrists. Every time they struggled, they tightened the rope themselves. He watched them die slowly. Eventually, 26 bodies would be found crammed into the narrow crawl space beneath his house, stacked on top of each other, covered in quicklime, hidden directly under the family living room. 17-year-old John Butkovich worked for Gacy. After demanding his overdue paycheck, he vanished. His body would later be discovered in that same terrible crawl space. He raped them. He tortured them for hours. And then he strangled them, sometimes keeping them alive as long as possible so he could watch the life slowly leave their eyes. As the crawlspace filled with bodies, the smell became unbearable. Neighbors complained constantly. Gacy simply shrugged and blamed a broken sewer line. They believed him. When the crawlspace could hold no more victims, he began driving to the Des Plaines River at night and dumping the bodies into the dark water below. Most of his victims were runaways or troubled teenagers. Some were his own young employees. All of them made the fatal mistake of trusting the friendly contractor with the big smile. The stench from under the house grew so strong that neighbors called the police. Gacy greeted the officers with his usual charm and blamed the odor on plumbing problems. They left without searching further. 15-year-old Robert Piest was last seen on December 11, 1978, standing outside the pharmacy where he worked, talking to John Wayne Gacy about a summer job. Finally, the police returned to 8213 West Summerdale with a search warrant. They had no idea what nightmare they were about to uncover beneath the ordinary suburban floor. On December 21, 1978, an officer shone his flashlight into the crawlspace and saw the first skeletal remains. Then another. The horror had been revealed. 26 bodies were recovered from the crawlspace. 4 more were pulled from the Des Plaines River. 1 was found under the garage. 33 victims in total. John Wayne Gacy was arrested that same night. Almost immediately, he began talking, describing his crimes with a strange, detached calmness. In police interviews, he confessed in chilling detail to 33 murders. He remembered each victim. He remembered how each one died. The crawlspace had become a secret graveyard. Bodies were stacked like cordwood. Some of the victims have still never been identified to this day. The modest brick house at 8213 West Summerdale Avenue became the center of the worst serial murder case in American history. How could one man hide 33 murders in plain sight for 6 long years while living as a respected member of his community? The man the entire neighborhood trusted and admired had become a monster the entire country would come to fear. For years, families have been desperately searching for their missing sons. The answers they had been looking for lying directly beneath Gacy's living room floor. 4 of his victims were recovered from the cold waters of the Des Plaines River. Some of those young men have never been given their names back. The evidence recovered from the house was overwhelming. Bodies, clothing, jewelry, and personal items belonging to dozens of missing young men. During his confessions, Gacy bragged about the murders. He laughed. He showed absolutely no remorse for the lives he had destroyed. Eventually, the house itself was torn down and the lot cleared. But the horror that happened there could never be erased from memory. 33 families were shattered forever. Young lives full of promise were stolen before they had barely begun. The national press descended on the quiet suburban street. The entire country watched in stunned horror as the story unfolded. Gacy claimed he was insane and suffered from multiple personalities. Psychiatric experts examined him thoroughly. They did not believe his story. The physical evidence told the story the killer tried so hard to hide. There was simply no denying what had happened inside that house. The pattern was clear and horrifying. He had killed roughly 1 person per month for 6 straight years without being caught. Even today, 8 of Gacy's victims remain unidentified. Their families continue to wait for answers that may never come. For years, John Wayne Gacy lived, ate, and slept every single night directly above the bodies of the young men he had murdered. Every neighbor who was interviewed said exactly the same thing. He seemed completely normal, friendly, even helpful. Even while in custody awaiting trial, Gacy continued to paint clown pictures, self-portraits of Pogo the Clown. The mask never came off. The story shocked the entire nation. John Wayne Gacy, the killer clown, became a symbol of pure evil hiding behind an all-American smile. The bodies were finally removed, but the horror that had taken place inside that ordinary suburban home remained. In March of 1980, the trial of the century began. The trial that would decide whether John Wayne Gacy would live or die for his crimes. Throughout the entire trial, Gacy sat at the defense table smiling, taking notes, and sometimes even laughing at testimony about his victims. His lawyers argued that he was legally insane and suffered from multiple personalities. The jury listened carefully, but ultimately rejected that defense completely. One by one, the families of the victims stood up and spoke in court. Their pain and grief filled the courtroom like nothing else could. The most damning evidence of all was Gacy's own taped confessions. His own words played in open court and condemned him. After hearing all the evidence, the jury returned guilty verdicts on all 33 counts of murder in less than 2 hours. The judge pronounced the sentence, death. The state of Illinois would eventually execute John Wayne Gacy for his monstrous crimes. He spent the next 14 years on death row, passing the time by painting more clown pictures and filing one appeal after another. Even behind bars, he became a macabre celebrity. Strangers wrote him letters and actually bought his disturbing clown paintings. After years of legal delays and appeals, the final execution date was set for May 10, 1994. On the night of May 10, 1994, the state of Illinois prepared to end the life of John Wayne Gacy once and for all. He ate his last meal, fried chicken, French fries, and strawberries, and showed no fear as the final hours ticked away. He was executed by lethal injection inside the state penitentiary. The nightmare that began in the suburbs was finally coming to an end. His last words to the world were defiant and unrepentant. "Kiss my ass." Even at the very end, he showed no remorse. At 12:58 a.m., John Wayne Gacy was officially pronounced dead. The killer clown was gone. His body was cremated. No family member claimed the ashes. In the end, no one wanted anything to do with him. For the families of the victims, the execution brought a measure of justice, but it could never bring their sons back or heal the wounds he left behind. The monster was finally gone, but the fear and the trauma he created in the quiet suburbs would never leave. John Wayne Gacy was executed by the state, but the killer clown still haunts the American imagination to this day. He single-handedly ruined the innocent image of clowns forever. The friendly circus figure became a lasting symbol of terror for an entire generation. The lot where his house once stood was eventually rebuilt with new homes and new families. But everyone who lives nearby still knows exactly what happened there. He became one of the most infamous serial killers in American history, inspiring countless books, films, documentaries, and true crime podcasts. 8 of his victims have still never been identified. Their grieving families continue to search for answers that may never come. Shockingly, his crude clown paintings continue to sell at auctions for thousands of dollars. People actually collect the artwork of a monster. Today, modern DNA technology and better police methods would almost certainly have stopped him much sooner, but in 1978, he operated freely in the shadows. Even now, children still play dark games called Killer Clown, keeping the legend alive in the most disturbing way possible. Why did he do it? How could one man commit such evil while smiling at the world? No one has ever truly been able to explain the darkness inside him. From the day of his arrest in 1978 all the way to the present, the story of John Wayne Gacy has never stopped haunting the public. The bright red smile was nothing but a fake mask. The evil behind it was terrifyingly real. We light our streets brighter now and lock our doors more carefully, but some monsters still know how to hide in plain sight in the quiet suburbs. More than anything else, John Wayne Gacy turned the safe, ordinary American suburbs into a real-life horror story that still chills us today. 6 years of calculated murder, 33 young lives destroyed, and finally, one execution that could never undo the damage he caused. He is gone now, but the fear he left behind still walks silently through the quiet suburban streets where he once lived. He was always just outside the frame, just beyond where you could clearly see, waiting in the shadows between the streetlights. This is what we know for certain. 33 young men and boys are dead because of him. Everything else remains darkness. He was caught. He was convicted. He was executed. But the fear he left behind, the clown who smiled while he killed, that fear still walks the quiet suburban streets.